Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Chan's Logic People Project, where we talk about people, the things they do, why they do them, and all the mysterious things that happen along the way. Today, I've got Jim Crowell with me. He's the CEO of OPEX Fitness, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. He's a champion, a gentleman, and a scholar. Take it away, Jim.
A champion is really nice words, Chandler. I appreciate you having me on. I think there's so many good parts of the conversation that you and I can just dive into, so I'm really looking forward to it. But just a quick background on me, really I've got a very wide-ranging experience set. So I've been in the finance world. I was a hedge fund trader for 5 years. I was a collegiate tennis player at Penn State. I owned a couple of CrossFit gyms back in the day and sold those, and then I was a coach for OPEX for a little bit. But just recognize that my biggest passion and desire to grow was on the business side. And so I found a really nice position in OPEX and just kind of kept helping James Fitzgerald and his wife Leanne really build the company, and have had a really good time doing it. And now I'm leading the charge of what the company's strategy is, and really my day-to-day is that strategy, as well as working specifically with OPEX gyms as the educator. So I do that, and I also am the teacher of our CCP business education as well.
I like it, doing all the exciting things.
Yeah, I like to stay busy, that's for sure.
Well, that's right, because if you stay busy, all of a sudden you're taking naps and you didn't do anything for 3 months, and you wake up and realize, oops.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be my personality just based on history, but I guess you never know, right?
Yeah, that's true. So talk to me a little bit about how you got into the hedge fund world.
Well, I'm somebody who likes to aggressively dive into topics, and I don't think that that's something that's ever going to change for me. Um, Even when I was 13 or 14 years old, I was really intrigued by the markets, so stock markets, bond markets, etc. And so I really tried to dive in to understand what those really look like. And so when I went to Penn State, I actually double majored in finance and economics because I quote unquote knew that I was going to go to Wall Street. That was just what I wanted to explore. And certainly the money was interesting to me, but really I was just fascinated by the world of finance. And so I spent 4 years in Penn State preparing myself for that. And then I ended up going to work for a commodities trading hedge fund right out of Penn State, and spent 5 years there, traded crude oil, natural gas, gasoline, all those different things. And I like to say that I kind of got a view of how the world really works because, I'm a big believer that he or she who controls the money controls a lot of how society runs. And so I got a really good firsthand experience of people running the show. So it helped me really understand the world from a different perspective, particularly than moving into the fitness industry. And it's still been beneficial to me to this day to be able to have been through that.
Oh, that's exciting. So if you could hammer that down into one sentence of how the world works, how would you say that?
I think that people have to realize who they are, who they're speaking to, and how they add value to those people. And in the finance industry, it all stems around how they're helping people gain more money. And in the world, from a general standpoint, that is very much on the surface how people view winning. They view winning through money. Now, obviously, as I get older and experience more things, I see so many different avenues that people can go down. But if you look at how the world is moved, whether that's politically or financially, so often it comes down to how the money flow is moving in the world. And if you can understand money flow, you can understand what deals or what technologies are going to get funded. You can certainly understand what's going to happen in an industry like fitness. And I know that wasn't one sentence per se, maybe just a bunch of semicolons, but I think it really helps all of us to understand how we can structure our businesses to be more successful, because that's one of the biggest things I see as a missing link in fitness is that coaches and gym owners, they have no concept of their finances. So they have no idea how to grow their businesses. A lot of coaches don't even know if they're profitable or not, or what their cash flow is going to look like. They're just going day to day. And so it's been really beneficial for me to have the experience that I've had, because I've got some credibility when I speak to any of our OPEX gyms out there or our CCP coaches, because what they want is to succeed. And if you don't succeed financially, you're never going to stay a coach or a business owner. So It really matters, and particularly in fitness, it's something that I think the conversation is just not on enough. And I'm not talking about our coaches, trying to make $1 billion a year. I'm talking about them having successful lives that grow over time, and that conversation is generally not clear enough. And when somebody is having that conversation with a gym or a gym owner, they're trying to do it in a cheap way, i.e., how do you get more leads in? Well, a lot of times those leads aren't long-term clients. So how you understand your money flow it really teaches you how you can build your business.
It's huge. And in those sentences, there was a few of them.
There were.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. A lot of people get into this perpetual cycle I call it the perpetual cycle of success and failure. They think they succeed because they generated a couple of cold leads, but then they lose those leads, or they don't know if they actually made the money to acquire those leads, or if it even was profitable, or even what happened at all. So we become this revolving door, and that leads to frustration and then failure, and then the feeling of inadequacy in the business.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think maybe to go one step sooner than that, most coaches don't define success in business. So part of success must be financial. It has to be. Because if you are losing money month in and month out, unless you're a trust fund kid, right, you can't go on in a gym that way. So you have to grow monetarily. You also have to think about scaling your growth monetarily, because what's to say you don't want to have a family one day, or maybe you have multiple kids, maybe you want to buy a house, maybe you want to be able to pay down your house. But generally where you start in coaching can't be where you finish. So you have to grow financially if you want to have at least partially a definition of success. And of course, the other part of the definition, in my opinion, needs to be how you're benefiting your coaches and your clients as well. If you have the big three, coach, client, and owner, if all three of them are winning, at least in the OPEX standpoint, that's how we define success.
No, so I think that's huge, and that's one of those things that you look at. It's the three subsets of the business there have to work synergistically to make sense and to connect together. The client has to be happy, and if the client's happy, the client is going to refer out, and the client's going to stay forever. Then the coach has to be happy. The coach has to be able to make not only a living, but be able to live comfortably and happy, so then they can raise a family, and they can do this as their one job and their one position, and they don't have to work 6 other jobs to make it happen, which if they do have to do that, they fall off and you lose coaches. And then the business owner has to be happy. There's nothing more exciting than looking at your profit margin once a month and thinking, how can we increase this? How can we increase customer happiness and staff happiness to ultimately increase the level of caring in our business and the profit margin, so we're successful, happy, and we're going to stay open.
I may have just gone out there for a second, but I agree. I think if you can put those big three pieces in, you have to remember that metrics are historic. So I think a lot of people, make themselves feel good or bad about a plan based off of their metrics. But what you need to have the metric that says, well, profit went from A to B, but here's my plan to make clients more successful, coaches more successful, myself more successful, so that in 3, 6, 12 months, here's going to be what profit does. And I think that unfortunately a lot of coaches are either so busy or just not necessarily educated on this. But when you can put those pieces together, that's how you develop the plan that you can build out all of the deliverables and projects that you can put together to make your business more successful.
Exactly. Organize your life and your business into phases of strategic planning. So a discovery phase, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What could go right? What could go wrong? Then a planning phase. Okay, now that we think this is a viable opportunity, or this is viable, or this is what we need to do, how do we do it? How do we make it happen? Execution. So now we're doing it. Could be a 1-day execution or a long-term 1-year execution. And then post-execution analysis. So what am I doing long-term? What can I fix? What were the problems and what didn't work? And how can we fix it for the next discovery phase?
Yeah, for sure. We always say in OPEX, strategy, execution, measurement, refinement, and you just do that over and over and over and over and over again. And when coaches start to recognize that it's through numerous iterations of that, that's what compounds your business. So everybody wants to be, I don't know, what's a great example, Gary Vee or somebody like that, where it seems like with one social media post, they have hundreds of thousands of eyes. Well, That started a long time ago with no eyes, and he's
Yeah.
brilliantly compounded on his image and his social platforms and his website and his podcast and da 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 da. These coaches have to realize that they need to compound into that, but when they get to that inflection point, compounding starts to really make a difference. But in the beginning, it doesn't feel like that happens just because you're starting to change the direction of your business. So it's like trying to change the direction of an oil tanker. Once you start, you're going to have to get some things fixed up before you can make public-looking quality changes or success changes. But you got to compound it. So a lot of stuff happens behind the scenes where the public doesn't recognize it, but that's where it's all happening. That's where you get success.
Yeah, that's huge. Everybody always looks at the end result, and what they say, well, why can't I have that? Like, well, you got to start first, then you have to build it out, then you have to figure out what you did wrong, then you have to do it again, and then you have to continuously make it happen until you grow enough. And if you want to be at like the Gary Vee mentality, you need to grow up a big enough of an audience that cares about what you've been doing for several years until you get to the point to where you can actually make that big of an impact.
Yeah, exactly. And what's so important for these folks is that they have to understand who their audience is, number one. Most coaches don't really know that. They just want to try to service everybody, and that's a losing battle. But number two, once they have their audience, they have to understand what they're trying to say to the audience. So Gary Vee, for an example, like you've seen him slightly tweak his strategy here and there because you're paying attention so closely to, or I assume you are, Chan. Like, I just kind of like to watch the strategies that these big influencers have just because I find them fascinating.
Yeah.
But what you'll notice is these guys have a little different thing happening every 3 to 6 months, right? Well, that's because they're trying to optimize what they're saying to their audience for engagement. So they don't give a shit if they have 1 million followers if a small percentage of those people actually engage with them. They want the most number of followers who will actually engage with them so that they can sell product. So same thing as a coach, right? I don't care if you have 500, 1,000, 100,000 people. If you don't get any clients from your audience, then you're just doing it for a hobby. So a lot of consistent metrics need to be looked at for what successful is on these different marketing channels. And coaches, unfortunately, they're going for likes, and likes are good, don't get me wrong, but those likes need to turn into conversion if they want to have success.
Exactly. And that's huge. And thinking about the big people out there, I looked at this the other day. You look at people like Gary Vee, who does a fantastic job of building out his audience and building out his network and really engaging and listening to people. And then you get the people on the other end of the spectrum, like Tai Lopez, who tends to just sell things all the time. And you look at their engagement levels, because you can look in Insights and check both their engagement levels. And Tai's is always 0, and Gary Vaynerchuk's is like 187,000. So that's the long term. He always says, follow what I do, not what I say. And so when you look at that, he's in there, he's in it, he's building that, and he does live by that long-term dream and that long-term game versus the short-term, what can I sell now mentality, or who can I sell it to?
I agree. I think that coaches as well, we're in an industry where people want to trust us to change their lives. So if that's your goal, and you can't engage them through quality content or social media or a website or in person for that matter, and that's something I'm sure we'll chat about, but talking to people in person is a massively undervalued skill in a coach. But these coaches need to know that somebody like a Gary Vee is going to have success in his realm, but a coach has to have success in getting people to understand that they're credible and helping them change their lives. If your job is to bring people into your gym and your brand is to be a high-end quality coach, what are you putting on the internet? Because that's going to be how they like you or not. If you want to be the fun brand or the sexy brand or something like that, okay, I can understand that. But a lot of coaches that I speak to, they want to be known as the best coach or the coach who gets their clients the most results. If that's the case, then you have to look at what you're putting out and you have to ask yourself, is this post going to make people believe that I'm more credible than the person 100 yards down the street? And I think, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, coaches aren't planning that or strategizing that out up front. They're kind of just going with their gut. And so their message isn't clear and consistent, and that's hurting their credibility for the market.
Yeah, definitely. That's that mentality of, I'm sitting on the couch and I know I need to produce something, so I think about it for 30 minutes and then I just pop something off the top of my head.
Yep.
When it should be an organized calendar. Like, who am I speaking to? Okay, so I want to speak to the older lady down the street who's 49 years old, whose hip hurts and she can't function very well, and I want her to think I'm a professional. So I probably shouldn't run in circles with something on my head screaming and yelling.
Yeah.
I'll probably do something where I'm speaking directly to her. Here's how you fix your hip pain. Here's what I would do to fix shoulder problems. And here's some things you can do to eat healthy when you're running around at a restaurant or when you're playing bingo or whatever it is you do. But you need to think in their mindset. What is their pain? What is their problem? How are they struggling or hurting? And how can you solve it and make it seem like you're speaking directly to them?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that's a great point. And it's just not done effectively enough. We might not see everything that's happening under the surface with somebody like a Tai Lopez, because I believe, I could be wrong, I believe he's quite successful in selling, but most likely he's selling to a very hyper-targeted ad set that we might just not be getting targeted for. So I think, if that's what your strategy and business model is, then you're just trying to optimize your cost per conversion, and that's the game. I think that a lot of coaches think it's wrong to be the sexy brand. It's like, people need to realize there's no wrong, way of branding yourself. It's just how you're branding yourself. So it depends what you want to be. But if you want to be high-end premium coaching service, then you need to act high-end and premium, and you need to show results and show relationships with people that prove that you're high-end and premium. I just think a lot of coaches, unfortunately, want to be that way and then don't show that to the public.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think they get into this problem where they think they need to cast a really wide net and they need to capture as many people as humanly possible, which ultimately leads them to a path to where they're not really happy with what they're doing and they're not capturing the right market. And when they do figure it out and they do figure out, oh, maybe I should cast a smaller net and try to really get these people who I can put all of my attention onto and the people I really care about and the market I really care about. And then you end up being the high-end brand that you want to be, if that's your direction. And when you think about it, some of them say often, well, I don't think people can afford it in my market. I'm like, well, people can afford these things. It's your responsibility to convince them that they need it or tell them they need it and get them comfortable enough with you to where they think you can provide it. People go out there and buy a Coach purse on their credit cards because they think they need it. And
Yep.
Those are the things that we can do as coaches. And you have to understand that it's not a question of price. It's a question of, do I need this and can you provide the service? And do I trust you enough to do it?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that he or she who's most certain wins the sale, and that's either the salesperson or that's the person trying to be sold. And if you're not so sure of the value that you're going to add to this potential client's life, you won't sell them. And I'm not talking about fake value, right? I'm talking about building a robust product and service that really benefits your clients. If you do that, then you're going to have a lot of happy clients. To your earlier point, they're going to refer you clients. Those are the easiest sales in the book. But you're also going to have other people that hear by word of mouth or see you on your organic Facebook page or see you speak at a lunch and learn or whatever the place is, and you're going to have more credibility. But because you're authentic, people are going to find more empathy in your message to them because you're speaking directly to them, and that empathy mixed with credibility is the real ticket. So when you combine those two, that's what gets people to buy. And then your certainty when they're in front of you, that's how you close the deal. So I think that you're spot on with what you're thinking about. And most coaches, they're just piecemealing it, which is not their fault because they've never been taught this stuff.
Exactly.
They're
winging it the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so I know so many coaches, I'm sure you're in the same boat, that they just want to coach and help people. And I mean, what's more noble than that? I mean, we're talking about, a model of health that is potentially more helpful than medicine. And obviously I'm talking about preemptive. You get what I'm saying. But they don't want to do the business side. They don't want to sell. They don't want to market. And I understand, and I actually do empathize with that because I've seen so many coaches struggle with this. But if you want to be successful in a business context, you have to do those things. You don't have a choice. Because there's more and more models that are selling direct via Facebook ad. And to go to our earlier conversation, Orange Theory is a brilliant example. They are great at optimizing their social channels from a paid standpoint. you're not going to outspend, 25,000 a month from Orange Theory.
No, never.
So as a micro gym owner, if you don't have a great story that you're telling, if you don't know your message, if you don't know who you're talking to and what their challenges are, you won't actually have anything to say. And if you don't say anything, then nobody's going to get on board with what you're trying to do. And unfortunately, the gift that you're trying to give your community is going to go unnoticed. And that's where most coaches, that's where they feel the most pain, is that they really can help people, but they don't know how to do it. And that's, you and I are in the same boat. That's where we know that putting a strong business concept around your coaching is mandatory if you want to coach for a lifetime. And that's just, I don't know that anybody could explain me out of that stance. I just think that that's so important.
Oh, it's huge. It's incredibly important, and it gives the coaches the idea that that not only are they coaches, but now they have the skin in the game to build and manage their own structure, and they really understand the process and everything involved. And it gets away from this idea that, oh, I'm just a part-time coach who shows up on the weekends, and more of, oh, I'm in it to win it. I'm trying to do this right. I'm building the content I need to build. I'm talking to the people I need to talk to. I'm optimizing what I'm doing around my ideal client. And I understand and know what the people surrounding me are doing. I pay attention to what Orange Theory is doing. I pay attention to what the most successful industries are doing. I watch it, and then I model what I'm doing based off what I need to do, and I use them as a guide and an example.
Yeah, there's so many good ideas out there. There's so many larger brands that we can take small cues from to be better at marketing. And, sometimes coaches, right, they want to do something like paleo diet and whatever. And so they see a brand like Coca-Cola and they just want to be angry at them.
Yeah.
And I'm in the opposite boat. I want to learn how Coca-Cola can take carbonated, whatever sugar basically, and make it the best brand in the world.
Exactly.
I think that we can take so many great points from these brands. Obviously a lot of people in the coaching industry right now want to love Apple. It's like, I get it. You want to be a brand that everybody wants to pay a lot of extra money for. But what are they doing that's so relevant? And I would say Apple generally, you go back to the 80s, right, with the Think Different, and, well, sorry, that's the newer one, but the original Challenging the Status Quo. Mm-hmm. And you just say that was one of the finest, fastest stories ever told in marketing history. And that completely launched what Apple was going to be until Jobs left and then when he came back. So you just can't forget what made these iconic brands iconic. It's always a clear, followable message and story that gets back to why they do what they do. So if a coach wants to coach, let's say, let's just take an example that I'm not an expert in by any means. Let's say a coach wants to be the best coach of new mothers in the entire city. He's going to have to tell a story, and I'm saying he purposely here, he's going to have to tell a story of why that is so important to him, because the market's going to be confused, because that's not the norm. But it doesn't mean that he can't build a thriving business if he connects to that market and why he can help them overcome their challenges and live an inspired life using fitness as the medium. So I think that any type of audience and any type of message you have can connect if you're very consistent with it, and if you really, really think through how you're adding value to these people's lives for the long run. Because remember, people want to see what happens after they become a client. They don't care about right now. They want to know what their life's going to look like after they become your client. So if you can show them that, that's what they'll buy into, that's what they'll pay money for, and that's what they'll stay excited to continue to reach for. Which is why there's so many, like, look at, martial arts back in the day, right? The belt system, it's like, I want that black belt.
Yeah, the black
just
belt.
think how powerful that is. In fitness, it's a little bit more simple because it's, I want that pull-up, I want that six-pack, I want that weight goal, I want that strength, I want CrossFit Games, and, whatever the goal is, if you're going to be the best in the industry at helping people reach that, then you have to show them that you're the best at it, and you have to connect why it's so important to you and to your clients.
Yeah, and that's huge. And we have these micro gyms where it's so easy to show who we are and the people inside and build the story, build upon the original story. So you have the story of imagine where you could be, because that's where the client needs to be. They don't care about the process or what's going to happen. They want to know what's going to happen when they get there. And so you have the story that tells this is why I'm doing it, this is who I am, this is how it helps you. And then that story builds and bridges and goes into continuous stories. So now you bring a client in who was successful and they tell their version of the story. And then you come in and you help talk to them about, okay, Sally Joe mom who wants to come in and just get away for a little bit and have fun and experience something outside of raising the family 24/7, but she also maybe needs to bring the family in. So now you talk about that. Hey, we're a family friendly environment. This is the stuff we have. Look, this is little Johnny in the corner. Sometimes I carry him around the gym. And so you really not only just build that relationship, but you build that trust dynamic and that dynamic of, you know what? I could see myself in there. I could see myself working with Coach Joe. He seems like he's awesome. He's a different dynamic than what I thought I was going to be used to, but I really feel like that's the place I need to go, and that's where I connect to. And people connect with people. So if we can showcase the people behind what's happening and the people involved in what's going on and the people who understand what the people need, then we build that ultimate culture of caring that we need.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not even going to add anything to that. I just totally agree with that statement. That was great. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about when we start to get people who come into the gym. A lot of coaches are afraid of the conversation that needs to happen. And I think if you take it back to what we were just talking about and you leverage the relationship you've already built with good marketing, good branding, and good direction, bringing them into the gym is more of a conversation of how do I enroll this person? This person needs and wants to be enrolled now. And now it's not trying to convince them to do anything.
Yeah, I think to me, I always look at sales as there's a couple of different types of people who are going to walk in. Number one, you have a referral. If you can't close a referral, you've got a big problem that's probably out of the context of this show. If somebody says they want to start and you can't get them going, it's a problem. Then you have a second tier, which would be somebody who heard about you through word of mouth, not necessarily a referral, but maybe they've seen some of the stuff that you've done on social media. Maybe they heard you speak somewhere. I'm not sure, but that's where there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of these coaches out there. So I'm just going to throw out there, let's say your service is $200 a month. You want to close, 3 clients who have come in from some sort of word of mouth or just awareness about you. What generally seems to break down is first and foremost a process. So we've got to realize that in today's day and age, everything has an amazing user experience. So, let's go back to Apple. You walk into Apple, everybody has the entire store on a handheld device. So they know everything that's going on no matter where they are in the store. You walk into a micro gym, and if they walk over and greet you when you walk in the door, they have no idea what they need to do next or what assets they need to give you or brochures or what's going on. And I think that there's a huge lack in process for gyms. So if you're a gym owner, ask yourself the question, what is the exact way that somebody who walks into my gym with a potential interest should be taken through the process of getting them enrolled? And generally when I ask an owner that, they have no idea. Generally they have some vague idea that says, I'd walk over, I'd say hello, I'd see what they're looking for, and then if it was a good fit, I'd see if they wanted to join. And okay, maybe that sounds good on the surface, but there's no actual step-by-step through it. Where do you want to take them first to get the ball rolling? Who do you want them to speak to or meet or have a conversation with? What's the first thing that you have to ask them in order to understand where they fall in a buying cycle so that you can make sure that you're speaking at their level so that you're not too far ahead or behind where they are? Because let's say somebody is ready to go, great, we'll sit them down and enroll them. But if somebody is just trying to get some more information, you better have some assets, i.e. brochures. You better be able to speak to them about what they've done in the past. You better also understand if you're going to want them to come back, for a sales consult, or if you're going to try to close them right then. And then here's the second part where owners really drop the ball, is they don't teach their staff. So generally they might be able to do that, but if they're not in the gym, sales go to zero. So generally that's where people fall through. On the process itself, generally I look at a couple of things. Is you have to prove value is much larger than the price. So very often price point will be the excuse. It's generally not under the surface what's the most important, but generally if somebody comes in and says it's too expensive, you haven't proven the value of the service. So you have to ask yourself, what haven't I overcome? Over objection handling, right? Like, what have I not overcome for this person to be a buyer right now? Is it that I haven't connected to their challenges? Is it that I haven't clearly explained what the service is or how it works? Is it that they don't feel that they have a connection to me, my coaches, the gym, the clientele, etc.? And you have to be able to, in a very effective way, overcome those objections, because that raises the value, i.e. it raises their willingness to pay for the service. And then you have to actually close the door. I've seen more coaches not ask for the sale than I can care to remember, because it's brutal to watch happen when they've done all this work and then the client walks out and they never actually ask to start them. I know that that's a bit 60,000 feet, but that's generally what I'm seeing. And then you've got that third category, which is a lot colder. That might be somebody who calls you, or they send you a Facebook message to your business page, and they don't really know anything. Same idea on process. Generally, that process is not tight. Same idea on teaching it to your staff. You have to teach that process to your staff or whoever's handling your social media, even if it's yourself. And then you have to ask yourself the question of, why don't they know anything about me yet? So is it that they just happened to Google search for a gym near them and I popped up? If that's the case, okay, cool. What's the quote-unquote package that they should get in terms of the information, and how can I get that to them in the most clear and concise way possible while I'm on the phone or talking to them through this messenger or email, etc. If you can get them that information, then your goal is very likely not to close them at that moment, because they don't know who you are, they don't have any trust for you. Your goal is to get them to come check out the gym or jump on a call, depending on where you are, because you're trying to move them forward in their buying cycle. A lot of coaches just try to go to the close without talking to somebody about being aware and being interested in their product. And when you do that, that can often feel very salesy because the person's not ready to buy. But remember, if we go back to, there are 3 different buckets of people. Somebody comes in on a referral, I might ask them a question or two about, how they got here. And then if they're ready to go, I'm not stopping them. I'm enrolling them right then and there, because I want the credit card to swipe. So if you're in one of the 3 buckets, you, as the coach or as the person who's handling that conversation, you have to know which bucket they're in. You have to know the process that you want to flow them through. And then you have to really, specifically based on where they are in that buying cycle, you have to give them the information that proves value, so that their willingness to pay goes up, so that no matter what price point you come out with, they just have to have that service.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the whole thing is organized around these systems that gym owners generally don't build. It's, what is the process that you do to make things work? And I've had conversations with gym owners where it's 5 different people do 5 different things. And there's no unison in this process because there was no clear leader or mentor to build this. And so if you're the gym owner doing this, it needs to be, what happens when someone fills out a form on the website? Every single step along the way needs to be written out and optimized. And okay, what happens when they show up for a consult? What happens when they show up out of nowhere? What happens when they no-show? Then what do you do? A lot of people say, well, they're dead to me. Well, maybe not. Maybe we needed to nurture them a little more to make them care enough to show up.
Yep.
And then what happens when they come in and nobody closes them, or they don't close? They weren't ready right then. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be ready in the future. So now we need to put them into a bucket. Okay, so now those guys go over here. We continuously feed them great information, nurture them, and go for the ask down the road. And then we move into, okay, now people do close. A lot of people drop the ball here. They close, okay, yeah, I'm ready to go. And then they walk out the door and you don't swipe the card or take any kind of payment. And well, that person's gone forever.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, people listening to this conversation are probably going to ask themselves, well, how the hell do I get all that set up? It's getting easier and easier every year, thankfully, with simplicity of, CRM systems or, email follow-ups. You can use MailChimp for a lot of this stuff, at this point. But most of this, in my experience, comes down to the gym owner having a game plan. So what are you actually trying to do at each step of this process? If that can be articulated well to the team, you will close more people even if you don't have a bunch of fancy automation. But if you don't have a game plan, you're not going to close well, not everybody, but you're going to close a much smaller number of clients than you would if you have a good plan.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the idea of the leader or the owner or whoever the mentor is needs to be able to display a clear vision of what's happening and explain that to their team and rally that team a little bit. If you can't rally your team or articulate what you need to happen to them, then they're just going to get frustrated and not care because you're not giving them a reason to care. And it's ultimately your responsibility as the mentor, the leader, or the owner to build these things and explain it to your team, get them rallied and get them doing it.
Yeah, something that I used to struggle with a lot is I used to think that everybody just understood what I wanted. And it's just not the case. You have to so clearly articulate what you're asking your team for, and you have to ensure that that's what they're delivering. So a lot of coaches, they spend a lot of time putting a plan together, and then they don't actually manage the plan. So, I know that we're talking about a lot of things that coaches aren't doing, but that's where the pitfalls happen. So how do you have a great game plan that has a process that's managed effectively, and that there's, a digestion after each one of these conversations, meaning, how do you as the gym owner have a conversation with the coach or the salesperson to say, hey, great job here, here, and here, but I think we need to upgrade this, and then go into your SOP, standard operating procedure, and upgrade that standard operating procedure or that sales script so that the person is more effective next time. That's just care for the business at that point. And I know that, gym owners are often very busy, but they have to remember that if they want success, some of these things are going to come in 2 to 3 percentage point improvements month in and month out. But that will lead to huge improvements over time, or that compounding effect that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's being a good mentor, helping your team understand what they did well, what they didn't do well, and what we can improve on, and creating that plan of action, because they're going to be in that mindset where they look to you for support, advice, and help. And if you can't provide that, or if you don't follow through, then that raises the level of frustration, which ultimately leads down to the client. And so our ultimate goal with all of this is obviously increase sales and increase retention, and then keep all three subsets happy.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, the retention piece is not enough coaches are thinking about how important good retention is for marketing. So we basically break out the idea that says your big goal is how many requested consults you get and how effectively do you retain your clients. Now, we're in a service where generally if you get a good requested consult, you can close it. But a lot of people then forget how important good long-term client retention is, because not only does it lead to more referrals, but it leads to better reviews and better success stories. Because if you have somebody who has been with you for a 5-year period and who's made a massive transformation that's now habitual, that story on social media is incredibly valuable to your business. And that's something that can sit evergreen, meaning it can sit, into perpetuity with the right social media structure or website structure. So that one client, just by being such a great example, could bring in 100 clients over the course of a couple of years. So those coaches need to think through what their best client success stories are and how they can utilize them continuously.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's like the concept of the super user. It's building this culture of raving fans who will do anything to help you grow and help build. And they'll do success stories with you. If you post something that you need anything, they'll be the first ones to share it with 9,000 people and do anything they can to help support you. And the more people like this that we build, obviously the better retention we have with those people, but the more people we have talking about how amazing we are out in the community and basically doing a little bit of guerrilla marketing for us. We don't even have to tell them to do anything. They're automatically on it doing it for us because they love what we do so in such an unbelievable way.
Oh yeah, hugely important. And I'm a metrics freak, and that also leads to the cheapest new client acquisition there is.
That's right.
Because referrals are basically free. Now you've earned them with the work that you've done with the client, but you don't actually pay for them. And so when gym owners start thinking about, well, I'm going to do this Facebook campaign, it's like, okay, that sounds interesting. How much are you going to spend on that? And what happens if you get 0 leads? And so, okay, you're going to spend $500 on that. Maybe you get 5 leads. I get that different Facebook structures can lead to hundreds of leads, but let's assume those aren't converting into good clients. one referral doesn't cost you anything, and nor did you have to set up all that structure to create a Facebook campaign that's probably going to be fairly unsuccessful, given how the algorithms continue to get harder and harder to convert off of a direct to close strategy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you find that referral is gold. It's like you're saying, it's the cheapest, most cost effective lead you could possibly get, versus on the other end of the spectrum that we just talked about is getting the campaigns that get maybe 200 or 300 leads at one time. You bring 50% of them in, 50% of them don't even show up, and then close 25% of those. So out of those 300 people who are exposed to your brand, maybe 25, 30, 40 of them actually came in and did something, and then we don't retain those for as long period of time. And so when I see these massive campaigns that have a huge volume that they bring in, I always worry about, what does that retention look like? Yeah, it's sunshine and gumdrops right now, but a year from now, do we retain those people? And the people we didn't close and didn't bring in, are those people happy with the experience? Or are they speaking bad about our brand? And what is the result of all this?
Yep. And then that to me just goes right back to what is the brand that you're trying to create. So if you're trying to create a brand that says we're the most professional and we retain our clients the longest, there are more effective ways than bringing in 200, weak leads. Now, I've seen stuff like Groupon here and there work well. I've seen, different challenges work well once, but the question is what is happening long term behind that? That to me is more of a branding question than a Facebook effectiveness question.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the diminished returns idea. You run it once, great. Run it the second time, okay. Run it the third time, not so great. And the fourth time, it's a disaster. Because we run it to the ground.
Ad fatigue. Yeah, ad fatigue is such a real thing where it's one thing to put your ad in front of people 4 or 5 times, but let's say that they actually click on it and then you quote unquote follow them around the internet because you got them pixeled and the whole thing. And then, they start to go through the process, but then they start back at zero. They start back with the first ad. What are they supposed to think at that point? Do they think that they're actually in the beginning position? Do they just look at your ad and go, well, that's not where I am, so that's a waste of money? It's very difficult to understand, but I'll go back to the point of user experiences, and marketing is getting so targeted now that the big companies are able to put such a good user experience into things that it's like they always know where you are exactly in the buying cycle. So somebody in a local gym who's trying to run ads, if somebody goes through your process and then you show them the same ad, that's a horrible user experience. Now, it doesn't mean that it won't maybe get some more awareness, but you have to ask yourself the question, what am I trying to do with this ad or these ads or this retargeting strategy? And if somebody doesn't think about that, they often show the same ads to people who shouldn't be shown those ads, and that pisses them off. So it's actually negative brand exposure at that point. Now, I will absolutely be the person to say as well, the more people see your name, the more they remember you. So it's not all for naught, but it's not as good as it should be based on what most brands are doing today.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You find some of the bigger the brand, the more levels they have to who they're talking to. And so the larger brands will have 5, 6, 7, 8 levels deep going down with clients. They have the initial awareness level, which is just some content that's enjoyable, maybe a great story. Level 2, why does someone care about me? Here's their story. Level 3, now we maybe go for an ask for whatever it is that we think you're interested in. And then next level is, okay, now we start doing it all over again. And it just keeps going, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper the bigger the company gets and the larger the user base is.
Yeah, but that's what, I believe all companies that have success will have to get there sooner rather than later. And I'm not talking about extremely complex funnels here. I'm talking about, a CRM will be simple enough that it will connect to your entire website and social media platform, i.e. something like, HubSpot or somebody's trying to do. And based on what's happening on those platforms, the system is going to recognize the person's contact record and say, this is supposed to be fed to them now. And I'm saying that that's going to be fairly easy to set up even for a local gym owner. Now, it's not quite there yet, but it's getting closer, and I'm sure that you're seeing this as well. But once that happens, if you don't have an experience like that, even at a local gym level, you're going to be left behind. Now, let me just say point blank, I'm a huge believer in in-person conversations and networking. Like, I should call networking actually building relationships, not just showing up in a room and talking for 30 seconds about why you're the best.
Yeah.
I'm saying actual relationships with people, because that is what gets people to understand who you really are. I think a lot of people are starting to recognize that social media is a ruse, and it's not necessarily truth. So, why is Facebook getting less popular on the organic side? Because there's too many things going on. So a lot of people are transitioning to Instagram. Well, that's going to probably happen in some way, shape, or form for Instagram one day as well. So where are people trying to go to get this information? It's never going to be better than getting live in front of somebody. Never. So as long as you can get yourself in front of people, I want to make sure that all of our gym owners and CCP coaches are doing that, because that's going to lead to the longest term success rates. And then what do we tell them? Once you have your in-person stuff figured out as well, now you've had time to test your message, your story, your conversion strategy, all that, so that now you can put those more refined characteristics into your social media and digital platform. That's been working far greater than just trying to start on social media. At least I should say for a high-end premium gym model. I completely get e-commerce strategy having to go digital right out of the gates.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm a big fan of getting the coaches to go to map out where your gym is or your business is, and within 5 miles, going to every one of the businesses who you know, or you have someone who knows someone there, and establishing a relationship in, walking in without trying to sell them anything, just making friends with these people, and then talking about how you guys can do workshops together, how you can structure any kind of event together, and what you guys can do to maybe share information with people, get people in both your environments, and build those real life relationships. Because like you're saying, if I go into Joe's coffee shop, make friends with all the baristas, they're going to rave about me when people ask about fitness. Or maybe I want to do like a high-end fitness and coffee tasting where they all come to the gym and we try different things out, and they want to be part of it. So they invite their whole customer base out. Now you have the relationship built to a level to where those people are going to trust you right off the bat because they were invited from someone they already trust. And then it's in person. So when you connect with people in person, it's significantly more powerful than talking to people on the internet, because it's just more real.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, we have to remember that as coaches, our goal is to make people's lives better. So the barista example, how am I making her life better, or am I? It's something where we forget that some of this marketing has to be quality, some of it has to be education, some of it has to be fun. So how are you making somebody's life better? That's a question that any gym owner has to ask. And if they can't answer it effectively, then I would probably narrow the strategy or narrow the number of people you're trying to build relationships with, and do a better job of building relationships. Because you just can't assume that people are going to love you just for saying hello. If you want to build a relationship with a coffee shop, then to your point, a great idea would be, the high-end coffee tasting and fitness idea. That's awesome. So how are you going to set it up to ensure that it's high-end, to ensure that it makes somebody's, whether it's an afternoon, a morning, an evening, better? And a lot of these events may get piecemeal together and not actually be great. So how do you make an event great? I would argue that most people need to spend some more time making one event outstanding, because they can compound off of the back of that great event and do it again with another group.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think you're right. When you think about what the ultimate goal is, it's, did I make people smile and they leave feeling like they got their problem solved that day? Because then they're going to trust you and they're going to come back to you for every single other thing they need. And the stronger you build those individual relationships, and the stronger you make those events. And like you're saying, if you have one solid event that happens and you don't try to make 37 happen, you're going to be a lot better off just keeping it simple and trying to focus on making people happy and making the experience better continuously over time. And you have the event, and then maybe afterward you have some sort of follow-up that gives them even more value, and you get them to the point to where they're coming in and they're asking you to sign up because they've had such a good experience with you and they believe in your brand so well.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the continuous evolution of the value that you're giving somebody. So if I can help somebody one day, let's just assume it is digital on this example, and I send them an email and it has a great write-up on I don't know, we just put something out about energy system training, right? So let's just say it's got something great about energy system training. Now, I would argue that in most local gym settings, that's going to be a complete flop for a client base, but bear with me. Let's say that you give a client something about that and they engage with it, i.e. they click on a link, they read it, and you can see that. The next logical step should be, how do I enhance that experience that they just had? So yeah, you might have a call to action or a button that says request a consult or something like that in the next email, but how are you expanding on what you've given them in value for the first email? Because you got to remember, you got the value from them because they clicked. Okay, so they've already done their part. You've now given them great value, which means that the playing field is even. So if you send an email with a call to action, I still think that there could be some value in that email along with story to continue to move them down the buying cycle. But you can't just assume that somebody's going to be ready to buy. So I'm a big believer that you have to add value basically everywhere in order to continue to move people through the buying cycle. But if you do that, then you'll have a fan who likely will convert. But even if they don't convert, they'll still speak highly of you, because you're not just randomly trying to sell them at every corner.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think if you're doing post-event follow-up, it shouldn't be, hey, did you like the event? Okay, click this button. Let's do this. Because they still might not care enough to buy, or they're not ready. So it should be, I always go in the rules of 3. I give them 3 pieces of value post-event, and then I'll throw out some sort of ask. And even if they don't ask on that one, then they continuously get more value out of that. But it's how much can I give to them to make them feel like that we really care and there's a lot that we want to give and we're not just trying to sell. And then when do we go for that ask? And so there's 2 interesting dynamics there. We have to give, and then make sure that at some point you're not afraid to ask them to come in.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Yeah, it's such a good point too. Just said slightly differently, it's never, you're not going to tell them when it's time. They're going to take action when it's time. So you always have to be prepared for when they are ready to go. Now obviously you're trying to create a situation where they're ready to go more often or faster, but until they're ready, they're not going. So when they're ready, you have to be prepared. And that's where the real artistry comes in on the marketing side, in my opinion.
That's it. That's when it's huge and they feel like it's truly personalized. And to your earlier point, that's when the AI-driven marketing will come out. And it's what you need to do, when you need it to happen, and it's all done for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to get smarter and smarter. And the interesting thing will be, what happens with all the Facebook data and everything, because that is one way. Obviously, there's credit card data and everything else as well, but that's one way where AI could very easily scrape data. So I'm really curious where the big central hub of information will continue to be, because that's going to be scary how much they know if it's all connected.
Yeah.
I mean, really scary.
That'll be incredible. So I think this has been a great conversation. I think we could probably have a part 2 to this to keep going.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, this is really fun.
Yeah, definitely. I really like it when we get engaging and we can go back and forth and it's a real true organic conversation, because I think people get the most value out of that.
Yeah, me too.
So if people want to ask you any questions or get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way is just, our main website is just opexfit.com. My social is just, Instagram is just Jim Crowell. But if you have, I always do this and I always have fun with it. I give my email out as well, just because not that many people take it. So my email is just jim@opexfit.com, and that's a great spot to get me.
Perfect. And I definitely think we should do a part 2, because I'd like to dive more into OPEX and what you guys are doing as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to do it.
Yeah, let's do it. And thank you guys for listening. If you have questions that you want to send me, just shoot them over to chandler@stoneagefuel.com or shoot me a Facebook message. I'm always available on there. And thanks for listening. We will see you later. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, Chandler.
See ya.